Oh, how very true. How very true. Glad you're here today, friends, as we try to get by a bit with each other and a way to help support those we serve and love back in our own places. Please feel free to put your cameras on, be part of a community today. We aren't huge in numbers, but I'm sure we'll keep on getting a few more. I know we have a lot of people have reached out to me saying they can't maybe make it live. We're going to watch the recording, hence we will be there. But glad you're here live so we can connect and engage in this good work. So once again, Joe Schrader here from OSSA. So glad that you're all here with us. What a great distraction from whatever's going on with the election today, right? This is a great place to be well for 45 minutes at least. And let's think about how we make the place, our little corner of the universe, a healthier and happier place while we work with really important things in service to others. So a few things as we get underway. Again, this session will be completed within 45 minutes or less. That's my guarantee to you. It is everything that you see today is in the bit.ly link. I put it here on the slide. Also, it's quicker if you want to get to it in the chat, you'll see it. So if you just want to open that up for whatever you like, just know it's available for you. And, also just in general, my approach is whenever I share this, I'm learning with you all on these things, but I'll do my best. And I offer it as, if this is helpful for you today as a learner, as someone experiencing it, as a student, if you will, think about how you can use the same slides, maybe the approach, make it how it makes sense for you, but you could help facilitate this for others back home. That's always my hope, is that it's helpful to equip you to be more impactful in your leadership. So this topic today is about managing expectations. Start with ourselves, but also that, get foisted on us by others. So I hope it's helpful. And we start with this idea of you are a well. You are a well, metaphorically speaking, leaders, because people come to you because they thirst. They thirst for knowledge, so they come to you. They thirst for resolution, so they come to you. They thirst for justice. They thirst for insight. They thirst for that and 1,000 other things, which makes total sense because you all here on this session are servant leaders. And that's what servant leaders are here to do, right? Is to serve others, to serve their deepest thirst where we can. But the core question at a time like this, especially when it seems like the needs of those we serve are unlimited and probably higher than ever before, the core question is this for all of us. How do we replenish that well of service to others before that well goes dry? I think that's the biggest challenge for us right now. And that's, if you think it from a matter of a metaphor or symbol, again, any one of these roles, that is what's going on right now. And that's why people struggle, because the margin left, or, we give. If we don't replenish, the well will be dry. And so we have got to take care of ourselves. So whether you call this self-care, whether you call it replenishment, whether you call it renewal, compassion, resilience, I don't care. But, the idea that we have to replenish if we are going to be an ongoing sustaining force and service to others. So that's the idea. So just think of it the well. I'd invite you to do that. If you work with that, then this definition of compassion, resilience, I think really works well. It's because one definition is a reservoir of well-being. Just stop right there. Like, what is compassion, resilience? It's a reservoir of well-being that we can draw upon on difficult days and in difficult situations. And if you haven't noticed, there's a lot of those of late, right? So that's important. Here's a more recent definition of compassion, resilience I see. And just take a look at this, read it yourself. And in the chat, could you please put any word or phrase or anything that really particularly connects with you when you think about what we want to put into ourselves, how we want to build these chops of compassion, resilience. So again, in the chat, any word or phrase from this or from previous slides that really helps you connect with the idea of compassion, resilience. Put it in the chat, please. Hope, empathy, how you maintain optimism in an imperfect world, this idea of strength, right? So, we know as we get deeper into how we grow people and just keep them coming in. I love it. So a lot of people connecting with very similar themes, right? And the idea you have, like Ken saying, you can consciously choose, and these are things you can do. So one of the choices you made today is just to come here and learn more and maybe connect more around this. maybe equip yourself to help others get connected to this idea of self-care, compassion, resilience building, and how to be optimistic, right? Like we all want that right now, this idea of, because if we do not have hope or optimism in a space, I don't know how you lead. I really don't. I think strong leadership, even the most dire of situations, cultivates hope. And so how do we do that? That we're going to try to explore today. And it's particularly around the facet of this, of expectations, starting with ourselves, on ourselves, but then also how we work with all those, needs and expectations others, again, place on us. So appreciate that opener today, and glad that you're connecting. So here's the flip of it. What's compassion fatigue? Because we have to replenish, otherwise we really are prone to compassion fatigue. So just take a look at some of these ideas. Again, this is stuff from the compassion. I'm going to show you the resource of compassion resilience in a second, but they come from this. And the idea of, secondary trauma, if that's a new term for you, essentially it means, you aren't necessarily going through that directly, the trauma, but you serve so many other people who are, that the secondary effect of their trauma can over time collectively lead to some burnout for you. And then again, you can look at these item by item. These are all potential manifestations or ways to, that we become fatigued in just serving others. So again, compassion fatigue is the other side of the dime of compassion resilience, I think. And, we're trying to think about today how we really build, we deal with the compassion fatigue that might ail us, and how we build resilience as, again, what is it? It's this idea of, I'll go back to it, a reservoir of well-being. So we want to intentionally think about how we're going to build and continue to replenish that reservoir of well-being in us that helps us work through our own challenges, but also, of course, serve others and continue to be optimistic in the imperfect world and inspire that in others as well. Okay, so if you're kind of signed up for the series, or at least some part of it, we know, just because you keep telling us, we have over 2,000 members, and every time we engage in some sort of opportunity to have people let us know what their biggest challenges are, priorities, what have you, social emotional learning support and mental health support are always at the top of the list. And so with that in mind, some of you I can see, and welcome back, were with me in one of those opening sessions at the start of the school year, right? Like end of October or end of August, start of September. And then based on that feedback from folks, you said, yeah, it might be helpful to continue to do an ongoing replenishment, if you will, of this. So based on that input, this is what I proposed some time ago. So if you were with us, whether you were or not, October 12th, we had a session led by two of our experts from DPI. And then the rest of these, I'm going to try to help walk you through, and I'm going to be a learner with you. But again, I just want to show, if you open up that bit.ly account, it took you to the resources, and essentially this is what you see. So any sessions, any slides or resources from session 1, and again, that was the October 12th one, are there. And then this is where session 2 today's are going to be. And again, the overviews for the series. So just know my intent is that if you're interested, whether you can make it live or not, as we work through these sessions over time, you're going to see the continuance of all this be built in that folder, and that you'll have that same bit.ly link to access it whenever you need it. Okay, so just know that's how we're trying to organize to be most helpful, and just be there for you as a resource. So again, we're here for managing expectations today, but it's part of a broader series around self-care and just trying to provide SEL and mental health supports for those like you who lead, but also to model for others. So this is a real simple little thing. A few of you seen this before, because I came across this in May or June, somewhere a month or two into the whole pandemic, and how we were all trying to lead through this. And this is an example from a principal outside of Wisconsin, and was a kind of an online meeting. Just imagine it being in kind of a faculty meeting. And as people were, connecting in some form, the principal actually posted this into the chat line. I'll just make sure you have a chance to read it. And then this was the response in red font, if you will, from one of the teachers in the chat line. So please take a look at the teacher. The teacher responded. So sometimes we mystify, what something is, like, oh, compassion, resilience. I don't know what that is. How would I do this? I mean, I think this is a real simple example of a leader being vulnerable. Again, remember the principal's words are in blue font. A teacher, one of the example responses in the chat was the one you see below in red, one of the teachers. But the principal in the blue font here is a simple example of just being vulnerable and real with his people, trying to, I think, convey expectations of self that we're going to adjust. Can you see that in here? You can see how there's some conveying of I'm gonna make probably a more healthy sense of expectation on myself giving this, because it's not healthy to do what I'm continuing to try to do at this point. And in that way, trying to also model the way of that with others. So in the way of communicating that, it also created relationship in the vulnerability. You can tell that in the reply. It also modeled the way for the teachers, in this case, at least one teacher, to think about how they might be able to have more realistic and healthy expectations for themselves too. And in the process, I think, impact the expectations that others might foist on us, because obviously teachers are a big source of a lot of expectations, maybe overwhelm for a leader. So I'm just curious. I've shared this a few times with people. I know some of you, I can see faces and who's here. You've seen this before. Has anyone ever tried making some sort of statement in a chat or in live session with people? If so, was anybody willing just to come up to the mic and just say what you did and what was the response? I'm just kind of curious as we get underway and play around with this today. Mic's open.
Oh, we did something, Ken McCormick, Greenfield, Maple Grove Elementary. We did something similar with a Padlet, where we had staff members put things in that helped them get through during the pandemic. It's something we did in spring. And staff just added different things throughout the year, what was getting them through. And then we've revisited that Padlet every so often since then, just so we can remember what those things are that are providing us some resilience.
Thanks, Ken. Appreciate that. Any other examples as we learn from each other and try things out?
I'm Jean Hoffman. I'm from McKinley Elementary School in Wauwatosa. One thing I had just to open up a meeting was everybody write in the chat one thing that they were most proud of learning since September 1st. And that was a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, just again, showing themselves as a learner, right? We're all learning. We're all learning. My gosh, we're learning. Thank you, Jean. Other examples? Well, how about one more?
This is Sarah Denur from Southview Elementary in Chippewa Falls. And I am pretty type A, OCD, self-diagnosed, and like to have things sent out on Friday afternoons for the upcoming week. And it had just been a really long week, and my communication to staff was, you'll have this by Sunday afternoon. I need a break. And the feedback that I got from all of my staff was really positive, and it just that part or chance to look human to them was important, and I think helped them to feel like it was okay for themselves to give themselves a break too.
Mm-hmm. Great modeling of that, right? There are limits and boundaries. Sarah, it looks very nice where you are, by the way. So glad to see blue skies in Chippewa.
70 degrees. I thought I needed to be outside in October or November already.
Right. I'm going to hide out as soon as this is over outside, I guaranteed. I think there was one more person. So let's have a fourth. Was there someone else that was going to share?
Yeah, Joel, I was going to share quickly. Jim Murata, Oak Creek School District, Deerfield Elementary School. A lot of really similar things, I think, to the point of that idea of trying to be as vulnerable and real with staff as possible. We've tried to have a few live meetings in a socially distanced, masked manner while providing virtual options when possible. And I think just some really honest, transparent words about how difficult and challenging it's been have really resonated with staff, while being open about the things that I need to do to take care of myself. But we've also provided a lot of opportunities, low tech, where we provide staff like a half sheet with a prompt to respond to, and like have a landing page where staff reflect and put it on there. And that's been nice to do some things low tech and like visible in like our staff work area, so that as you're passing them. So we have one for an upcoming in-service that staff will respond to, similarly to what somebody else said. I've grown professionally this year by just to highlight that, like, for a lot of our staff, it's probably been as challenging as it's been. We've also grown incredibly in our capacities and skills as professionals.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, what I'm hearing is thanks, Jim. What I hear about that from everybody is really just a way of being real with your people, trying to, again, give them a space to be optimistic without being toxically positive. You know what I'm saying? You can be so much Pollyannish on this stuff too, where that's not healthy or helpful, but, just being real. I'm letting people have a way to be, and you model it, right? I think there's so much of that. So, when you're going to learn some things today in this session is some ways to model expectations even more explicitly. And I'm thinking that as you get comfortable articulating that for yourself, maybe sharing that with others, you'll give space for others to kind of follow the lead too, like some of these others. That's what my hope is. So let's just keep going for now. Thanks for those great examples. So I don't know if this is new for you or not, but there's this compassion resilience toolkit. And if you open up the link, like I just did actually see it. And again, it's compassionresilienceToolkit.org is how you get there, or you just go there by just clicking on that slide I just did, which was slide 8 in the deck for today. But one thing they put in here recently is, look where my cursor is here. They actually have added this idea of resources, particularly they think appropriate for COVID-19. And this is only, I'd say, the past month this has been here. Now, Jim and some of the others, we've worked on this before. You remember compassion resilience? We did this, we were working on this a year or two ago. So it's been around, but this is new, this new link. And it's exactly, if you go to the typical landing page, I mean, this is the main landing page for compassionresilienceToolkit.org. They now have this hot link here about the COVID-19. So if you go there, friends, I'm just going to go back to our website. So again, or go back to our slide deck. If again, this is the web address. You'll find, again, if you open up that COVID link, this is what you're going to see: a series of videos. They're all about 4 minutes or less on various aspects of how you might stay resilient, strong, compassion resilience, building that, replenishing that well, if you will, especially during the challenges of what we're going through now with COVID-19. And you can see, and it was interesting to me because I had put out that series that you saw, and then I saw this resource and I thought, oh, great, that's going to help me even more, help us get used to kind of using some of these resources. So one of the things I want to use today, and I'm trying to show you where I found things so you can also explore just like I am. But we're going to look at this idea of expectations, of course, because that's the focus of today. So within the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, within the COVID-19 link, you'll see this part, a bunch of videos. This is the video I want to look at now. And this is a 4-minute video about expectations. So just bear with me here. We're going to watch that video and enjoy. And I'm looking for any takeaways from the video that you get in this 4-minute video that can help you manage your own expectations and the expectations of others through some of the tips they give. Enjoy.
One sure way to fall into compassion fatigue is unrealistic expectations. I'm Sue McKenzie. This is Emily Jonesberg. We work for Rogers Behavioral Health, and we're members of WISE, Wisconsin. With everything that has changed around us, so should our expectations.
And it's not surprising that some of us are losing sleep trying to achieve what we were aiming for just a few weeks ago. Those past expectations, maybe even that of wellness, could be unrealistic at this point. And unrealistic expectations can really leave us to a feeling of just not being good enough, which obviously has a negative impact on our well-being. So we want to do our best to practice realistic expectations during this changing time.
Yeah, so what would some realistic expectations be for this time? First of all, we can focus on the present rather than being wrapped up so much in the uncertainty of the future right now. We can look at what's within our control rather than focusing on so much that we can't control right now. And another expectation that's reasonable for us right now is to ask ourselves what our values are and reflect on whether our behavior right now is living up to our values or a sense of the self we want to be in the world. And then overall, we can ask ourselves if any of our expectations are reasonable, practical, and achievable right now.
And a mom we've been working with on some of our compassion resilience work sent me a note recently about how she's been changing her expectations. So I just want to take a moment to share with you all what she shared with me. So she said, like a lot of families, when our schools closed, I was swept up in worries about maintaining a solid academic routine and keeping up. But with everything that's going on, my kids and I were too stressed out to make that work. I quickly decided to adjust my expectations and focus more on our emotional needs. I still expect the kids to do some schoolwork as the day passes, but we are being very flexible to make time for connection and relaxation and outdoor play. They'll have plenty of time to catch up when schools reopen, and we're back to a more regular routine. For now, I'm squeezing my loved ones a little closer and worrying less about things like academic success. We're actually enjoying our time together while we're stuck at home.
Yeah, thanks, Emily, and thanks to that mom. So one of the things that we might want to be practicing right now is what's called radical self-acceptance. That is recognizing that some things may be a little more difficult, and we actually function best when we're accepting that difficulty and accepting some of our imperfections so that we can clear our mind to think about how do we want to act moving forward.
You know, Sue, that makes me think about an activity we do around radical self-acceptance, where we take unrealistic expectations and turn them into affirmations. So an example for me around that would be, as a mom, with my daughter now home from daycare, and I'm teacher and mom, is that I'm going to provide enriching learning activities all the time. And I'm realizing that that's not realistic. So instead, an affirmation that I could use to counter that would be that I'm going to do the best that I can, given the resources that I have, and know that my care and love of my child is more important than anything. When I'm able to adjust to that affirmation and focus more on that than that unrealistic expectation, it really does help maintain a higher level of wellness for myself and my. So we hope that these practices are something you could try and you find helpful, and that if you'd like to explore some more of our blogs, you're able to check those out through the resources we have on the page, in addition to some of the other resources that are available at those websites. We look forward to seeing you soon. Take care.
All right. Thanks, friends, for that. And again, if you're interested, the slide here, this is slide 10. If you just click on that slide, you'll be able to also just get that video directly. So again, trying to make it really easy for you to reuse or to make sense of this. So let's just kind of review. And we're going to actually I'm going to show you some examples. And then we're going to actually have you try out one or two of these for yourself, because that's where the really helpfulness, I think, comes, is my experience, when people actually work with something they're struggling with, and then they think about a way to reset that. So when you get some time here in a few minutes to actually try one out, think about like your litmus test. When you write out a healthier affirmation, like we're going to go through the exercise of taking something that's maybe an unrealistic expectation of self, or that others might have on you that's unrealistic or hurtful. How you might make an affirmation language and put that in a way that actually creates a space for reasonability in all of it. And when you try that example out, I'm going to suggest that these are your success criteria. You can actually look at what you wrote and just say, what I wrote as a better way of dealing with expectations, does what I wrote stem from how I want to live, act, and show up in the world? Does what I wrote focus on the present? Does it focus with what's within my locus of control? And lastly, can it serve as a guide for daily living? Because, we don't know all that's going to come our way. We do know that we're going to need some kind of general parameters to help us navigate, increasingly complex and challenging environment. And we can do that with optimism if we learn some of these tools. And again, I've been doing this a long time. My first administrative job was over 25 years ago. This language of compassion, resilience, self-care, all this is new language for our field. There was never any of this until recent years. But I think language pops up when we need it, because the precision of new language gives us ways to build new distinctions that'll help us better navigate in a changing, more complex and challenging environment. So that's why we have the language. And so there's no guilt here or shame if we haven't maybe talked about this before or thought of it even. It's really, I think, new tools for the new times. And they're critical tools, I think, for us to provide compassionate, sustainable leadership and have healthy regard for ourselves and our other roles besides worker bees, in these days. So anyway, so come back to this slide, when you try yours out, it's almost like your litmus test or success criteria. So just briefly, again, these two slides, this slide and the one I show next, this is actually the exercise around radical self-acceptance that they were talking about in the video. So you can see the steps. I'll walk through it quickly just so we can, but if you ever wanted to replicate this, this is basically between this slide and the next one. And these, of course, all do come from the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, particularly the COVID spot I was sharing earlier. This is actually how this would work. So in this exercise, here are 4 examples. You can see, and just take a look at on the first column here. These are examples of unrealistic and hurtful self-expectations. So just take a moment to read the 4. And then on the right, these are examples of how you take something that's unrealistic and maybe even hurtful in terms of a self-expectation, and you can make that into a better space by creating it as a positive self-affirmation. So for example, no matter how well I teach, it will never be good enough. You can transform that into, I'm good enough today as the person I am. While I will strive to be better in my work and life, I try to accept who I am today. So you can just see some examples of this. And this would be example, taking what's unrealistic or hurtful, and then going through this exercise of creating positive self-affirmations that are more healthy and realistic. Those are examples of self-acceptance or radical self-acceptance, if you will, that they were describing. No, I've actually, we have several academies I lead. One of them is the Building Effective Leaders Academy. And some of you have been at, this is one of the exercises we're doing today, or this year. In fact, these are just from last week's session. I have 2 examples. One's Phil Hart from the Green Bay area and Nicole Tepfer from the Madison area. And just take a look at their examples. And again, I'm going to give you these examples and then going to give you a little time to try it out yourself. So pay close attention, right? So look what Phil says. First, here's one of his. He goes, if I don't provide answers and fix problems as they are brought to me, then I am not doing a good job as principal and our school will suffer. I mean, I'm sure he's not the only one with that self-expectation that's unrealistic, right? Maybe even hurtful. Here's how he switches that. I will do the best I can each day. It's okay if I don't have the answer, and our school will get better by empowering others to seek solutions and to enact changes that solve problems. Now you can notice I asked people to put one in for their personal life too, because there's so much interaction between the two, right? So he said this as well. This is how many of you like have little kids like he does at home? This is his around that. He says, I need to seamlessly transition from work to home and perform well in both spaces. While I'm working at home, I should also be cleaning up, cooking lunch, working on projects, etc. Right? Not the only person with that unrealistic expectation of self. So the way he writes it, and you can read it yourself this time, I'll just give you a space to do so right here. And then with that in mind, that's Phil's, again, elementary principal in Howard Suamico in the Green Bay area. Here's Nicole from the Sun Prairie area. She's an elementary principal there. Just take a minute and just read her, again, first column, unrealistic self-expectations at work and outside of work, and then how she would reframe those into more healthy expectations. Just give yourself a minute to review. So I hope what you can see as you look at those friends is you can see these people, these 2 principals, our colleagues, having a much healthier way of viewing what they do, and not just at work and outside of work, and working through a really common challenge, having unhealthy, unrealistic expectations of self, and then how they might switch out of that mode into a healthier way. And I think if you look back, they could use these success criteria and say, yeah, those are meeting those criteria. That's a better spot from which to lead, live, sustain this work, this really challenging work of service, of being a wealth to others. So I'm going to open it up if anyone has questions, but let me just give you the task. So I would like you to try it out for yourself. I'm going to give you about 8 or 9 minutes just to try out at least one area. Maybe you can get a couple done, but just like you saw in either the examples from the exercise from the Compassion Resilience Toolkit, or from something you saw from Phil that resonated, or from Nicole. You have the slides. You can go back and forth as you want. If you want, you can just go to the slide and just open up. You can just kind of copy this down, whatever. But the idea is put one unrealistic expectation at personal life, one at professional life, and then try to go through and write it in a more positive, realistic way. Is the task clear, friends? Before we go on to 8 or 9 minutes of trying this out for yourself. Thumbs up for good? Okay. You can leave yourself on the screen. I'll come back in about 8 or 9 minutes. Thanks, Rich. I'll give you a 1-minute warning before we come back. Yeah, just seeing some wonderful examples. Keep them coming. Very helpful, very healthy language. Yeah. I mean, every time I read one, just think about the spot you're in, right? So as you look at what's here, just think about what we talked about. Like, okay, there's one thing to try it out. There's another thing like, okay, is this in the right spot? Again, just here's your, kind of like your math proof, right? I mean, I'm an English teacher by training, but I remember math classes where there's some parts you get an answer, a potential solution, and they say, okay, now do the proof to see it's the right answer. And I think to some degree, this can serve as the proof, right? The things that are written now as an example of radical self-affirmation. It sounds so monumental, right? But the idea of, no, it's just trying to healthy expectations. And again, if you can create this for yourself, think back to that other example we had, if I may. So think back to this example we were talking about at the outset. We just saw a principal in this situation talk about, here's what I'm going to do for myself, and then share it. And then, the response that did for others, and you hear like an example, like Sarah Denner from Chippewa Falls was sharing how, she shared something over the weekend. She, gave her some space, and that way that created an opportunity and appreciation for staff for just, being human. So I'm just wondering about, if you think about the, what you see in the chat, are you so vulnerable to actually just even share that? I'm trying to work through some ways of trying to take what is maybe unrealistic and unhelpful and start to share that. And if we do, create the space it can create in your school to be a little more humane, to be vulnerable with them, but also create a space and model the way for us all to work through this new terrain in a much more healthy way. So I hope you're getting some things. I just love the examples there that you have in the chat. Again, this is recorded. So if you can't quite capture all those down, if there's something you want, we'll have the recording out within 24 hours. Jenna's here. So thanks, Jenna, from our staff. Wonderful. Jenna Siebold is here. She'll get out a survey to you so we know how we can continue to make these better, but also the recording. So if there's someone you think back home that wasn't able to make it today, relax. The recording's coming out in 24 hours. Maybe they can join us live next time, that whole thing. So any questions or comments before we wrap up the last few minutes here, as I'm looking at the chat to see if there's anything there? All right, well, let me just say this then, friends. So again, I love to end with this sometimes. It's this classic parable story from the Cherokee Nation is where I'm told its origin comes from. And maybe because I'm a grandfather now, I'm going to be a second one here soon. Again, I appreciate it even more. So again, let's just take a moment, just give ourselves this space. So there's two wolves, and the story goes as you see here. I'll just read it just for the maybe calming end to our day. One evening, an old Cherokee told his grandson about a battle that goes on inside people. He said, "My son, the battle is between two wolves inside us all. One wolf is evil. It is anger, envy, jealousy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other wolf inside us all is good. It is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked his grandfather, "Which wolf wins?" The old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." I would hearken this point as we wrap up today, that what we're talking about, this idea of taking care of ourselves, building compassion, resilience, specifically today about setting realistic expectations on self And if we can communicate though, first have to be intentional about that, build those in a way that we can communicate, maybe even share with others. That message is going to come across. We're being that good wolf, if you will. Because what you see here, the idea of the one is all those descriptions of like, regret, guilt, pity. I mean, all those are about unrealistic expectations. What we're trying to do is spend more time that shift to the good wolf, right? Where and we can create that space for ourselves and model the way to have healthier expectations of our own selves. I really believe that not only helps others, but it also creates a space where others think about and maybe rethink what kind of expectations they've voiced on others as well. So I think it's a double helping yourself, but also creating a space where it's healthier. The expectations on each other that we might hold is healthier space too. So anyway, I hope this is helpful for you today. It's part of an ongoing series again. And the one we'll talk about next time on December 3rd is really connected. And I saw, like, for example, Brad Hoffman talked about setting boundaries, right, Brad? The idea of expectations of self and others on me is very connected to the topic we'll talk about next month around setting compassionate boundaries. So I hope you can join us. And regardless, if you can join us live, know it'll be recorded. And again, please give us your feedback on that survey. Jenna will send out along with the recording within 24 hours. As always, if you have anything that you need from me, you know how to reach me. May God bless you all and what you do. It's an honor to serve. And enjoy your evening. Bye-bye now.